And currently, I am working out of a home studio that is both outside in the warmer months and inside in the cooler months. And then I also work remotely at different pop-up shop stores. We're working on doing something with the Katie Diamond store in Hohokus in the fall. We're going to be working with crystals for the skin and sound bowl healing for rejuvenation. And I'm routinely at House Freya pop-up shop in Montclair, where I do little mini healings, both chakra balancing, which we could talk about. Those are complimentary if somebody makes a purchase, and as well as full healings that are 30-minute or 60 minutes. And in the current climate, it's a symbiotic relationship because I get people into these stores because they come in for their healing and then they inevitably buy things. And then also because I don't have my brick and mortar right now, it affords me a space with my clientele where I can see people and let them know what I do when I don't have lovely people like you asking me to say what I do. Mm-hmm. And basically what I say I do is I'm an instrument for healing. I am an empowerer, much like you. And I just try to help people listen to the tools that work for them. And many of the tools that I use are very ancient in nature, like the sound healing, the reflexology, the Reiki, and so forth.
Amazing. Amazing. So let's start with sharing with everyone what in your life has gotten you aligned and awakened.
So it started, the biggest push, Carolyn Myss refers to it, I believe, as the dark night of the soul, is when you are thrust into a very harsh reality after, you may have had trauma and struggles along the way, but there's one pivotal night that you can just remember being on your knees. And so that was the death of my sister from suicide. She was, I believe, 47 years old and had suffered for about a decade with anxiety and depression, but had a history of, we grew up a very difficult life, poverty and addiction and violence, all kinds of trauma. And so she did have PTSD as a result. And I was always more of an escapist. So for me, I was able to almost look at this as an illusion and be able to remain somewhat intact. But she relived the traumas of her childhood for her entire adult life. And I would say that was the dark night of the soul. But prior to that, it was something so small that you can't even imagine. So I had practiced yoga my whole life. Since I was 5 years old, I started with transcendental meditation. My sister was a hippie, and that's what she used to do to babysit. She would have all, that's when the Beatles brought Maharishi, back from India, and they all started meditating and doing transcendental meditation. So she would have me meditate with them. And so that was always a part of my life. But it was when my daughter was little. I didn't yet have my son. I remember being in a hotel in New York City, being in a crowded elevator, and her looking up at me with panic. And I knew in that second that I had to break this legacy of fear that had, battled the history of the women in my family dealing with anxiety. And I saw it in my toddler daughter's eyes. And that's when I decided to go to yoga teacher training. And I think that was actually what started me on the path. Formally, that was in place prior to the loss of my sister. But then I went very deep after the loss of my sister with yoga, with meditation, with Reiki. I was also devoutly Catholic. And so some of the practices that I do now, I was at odds with myself for being very conventional in a religious doctrine. And I really had to work my own way through that. And I still am very, very faithful. Every morning I get on Instagram at 8 a.m. and I offer live prayer, and it's non-denominational. So it's intrinsically ingrained in my DNA, my faith. And it's not necessarily that, I read all kinds of prayers. Today, it was a combination of Muslim, Hindu, Christian. So to make a long story short, it was the look in my baby daughter's eyes that started me more on the path. And then when I had lost my sister to suicide, I went to a psychic medium. And I was really at odds for going because that's very frowned upon in Catholicism. And I just was so heartbroken. I needed answers and closure. And anyway, he couldn't read me anyway. And, you know, I had my mother's voice in the back of my head, like, what are you doing? We don't do that. But I just wanted answers. And he couldn't give me any answers. He couldn't connect, but he was like, do you want to try Reiki? And I'm like, I waited so long for this appointment and I spent so much money that I was like, and I felt so awful that I was like, you know what? I don't even know what Reiki is, but I need something. Yes. And also that weekend I had a car accident. I totaled my Cadillac Escalade on the Friday and I was seeing them on the Sunday. So I was really like needing something. And it was amazing. And that's what helped me the most with the grief. I went about 4 times. And then he said to me, you know, you really are destined to do this, to offer this, to teach people. And I had a very profound experience that did give me confirmation. And I knew in my soul that it wasn't something that I wanted to do, that I had to do it. And so.
And that was the doctor that you said that was all Reiki?
That was how I started with Reiki, which is an energetic modality. I don't know. Do your viewers, you think most of them are familiar with Reiki? Or?
Why don't you explain? No, it's quite possible that a lot of people
It's so evasive, sort of. But basically, Reiki is an energetic healing modality, but it is very different than, let's say, an acupuncture. So if you were going to compare the two, in acupuncture, you have these meridians and you can, where the energy flows through and to, and you can take an acupuncture needle and it will help to open that channel up and let the energy flow. Because ideally we are energetic beings. There's electromagnetivity around the heart. People, when their heart stops, they get the paddles to kind of, you know, give them a jolt to get that electricity going in a regular rhythm. There's also, you know, an EKG for the brain. There's an electrical system that measures the eyes. These are all conventional things. There's the Heart Math Institute that talks about the physicality of the energy of the body, very respected by conventional medicine. But Reiki is different in that there are no needles and you actually don't even have to touch the person. You could have your hands above. The person could also be in another state, another location. And it is a little bit different than prayer, although it could be thought of a little bit of like a prayer. But what you're doing is you're channeling universal life force energy that you've been attuned to and allowing that to go to the person to free up those blockages, much the way, let's say, acupuncture would.
Oh, so you're freeing it up with your energy. So instead of the needle, you're okay. Explain.
It's not my energy. It's divine energy. Nobody would 100% want my energy.
I don't know about that. I think
universal. Well, it's the most purest form of energy. It's what gives life. It's what makes a flower grow. It's how the birds know how to fly and where to go to. It is the blueprint for life.
So how do you gain the ability to take that energy and bring it into somebody else? So
I am, everybody has the ability to do this. Some people find it easier to do because they can actually feel a sensation, or they think they do. I think I do. I know I do, but some people can see energy. But everybody has the ability to be this kind of healer, this kind of channel. So you get attuned. You would learn about what Reiki is. Many times there is I no longer, that's part of what I retired because, you know, you get older and you get wiser. And I really I'm all about kind of delineating what really keeping the parts that I think I do best and I like the most, and then giving it to others that work for me, what they excelled at. And so I have someone that now teaches the Reiki, and you would learn about it. It takes about a weekend. And then you go through this sort of like a ceremony or ritual where your chakras are opened and you are then able to, you know, be a channel to receive this energy and then just pass it along. Now, you have to be a responsible channel, okay? Because if you really buy into this, right, and this is a divine wisdom, this energy will go to the greatest need. You as the channel, if you are feeling very broken, very fatigued, you know, worried, fearful, physical ailments, whatever you may have, you're the first line of defense. Like, I don't want to say defense, but you're the first receiver as it comes through. Okay. So I've had to learn to take really good care for myself so that I don't lessen the experience for my client, because then they will, you know what I'm saying?
So if it's going through you and you're in a very broken place, then they're not getting the flow of it as, I guess, I don't know, I guess as go ahead.
Full throttle. Yeah.
Yeah. As fluidly, that's what I was going to say. Yeah. As possible.
I mean, that's what I believe, anyway. And I do also believe that, you know, in this, whatever our, you know, you as a life coach, me in this role, we have such a responsibility to live authentically. And so if we're not going to take care of ourselves and we're not going to do what we're asking of other people, that system will collapse because it's not built on integrity. And so, but anybody can do it. But what I think makes me especially confident in me being able to offer this, because you have to remember, the participant, many times the receiver, they may not feel anything. They just might feel relaxed, you know, but you know, you're asking them to be vulnerable and many times, you know, lay down in front of you and either have your hands above them or on them. And so they're in a very like sort of vulnerable place. So if they don't buy into it, the mind, all of our minds will quickly be like, oh, I don't think this is working or whatever. But that's where, you know, the sound healing comes in, is because I feel like through the sound healing, you know, people that come to me are able to relax because you get very lost in it. Everything has to do with vibration and tone and being in sync, the thoughts of resonance as opposed to dissonance. And so when you're connected to this vibration, this frequency, many people come and they think of it more as assisted meditation. People that can't meditate on their own, they can come here. They can, and it's very different. I love the apps and I love the online. And as I said, every morning I do something online complimentary. Sorry, that was the alarm. That was the house. But it's fine. That just meant someone hopefully, you know, left. So, so that gets them relaxed. And then, you know, oftentimes now people will be like, you know, I actually think I may have felt a current going through me, or, you know, they get that involuntary muscle movement sometimes, like where you go to sleep and you kind of feel like you're falling for a second.
Yes.
But anybody can learn this. Anybody can. I wish I had this when my kids were little, you know, and it's just a great thing to have at all times. And I did not buy into any of this. As I said in the beginning, I have a science background. I'm in the middle of 2 mentally ill sisters. So I wanted to keep everything grounded and only factual. And it was only through tragedy that I was forced to look at things that I've known my whole life. And what I've known my whole life is that I'm extremely sensitive. I'm sensitive to noise, to sound, to touch, to taste, to vibration, to everything. And so I'm using this. It's easy for me to use it as a gift. And what can I say one last thing? This is interesting. Yes. The way I discovered this, though, was prior. There is a saying that says, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And as I said, I went to this teacher, this medium, after the loss of my sister. I didn't know that's why I was going to them. But I want to back up a little bit before that happened, I work as a aerialist. So that's like Cirque du Soleil, you know, the silk, the trapeze. I still do that. I'm teaching 8-year-olds. I still take it myself. I did not start doing that till I was 48 years old. So, and I love it. And I had a whole aerial dance company and what have you. We did benefit performances and things. So, but what happened was 2 of my fellow performers fell, and they fell from pretty high, and I ran to them and I wanted to see if they were okay. And I just went like this, and I thought it was adrenaline. So did they, where we all just started shaking. And I'm like, are you okay? Can you stand up? What should we do? Do you want to go to a place? Should I call, someone to come here? Like, we didn't know what to do. And they were like, no, we're fine. And I said, you should probably go get checked out. I mean, they landed on a soft mat, but still.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, as I said, because I'm sensitive, I thought I had like an adrenaline hangover because I had every symptom of a concussion. I felt nauseous. I felt dizzy. I had a headache. And so I was like, what is that? And then I felt better within 24 to 48 hours. They were fine. I forgot about it. But then, since I'm a yoga instructor, and people, when they lay meditation at the end, it's called Shavasana, I would go and, put my hands, when you're allowed to touch people, on their shoulders, on their head, what have you. And I would notice that same trembling would start. And I was like, what is this? And so I said, I have to ask God what this is. And so we were in a church in Paris, France. And I was with my husband and my kids. And I just said to God, I'm like, listen, if I am going to touch people and start trembling, because it got to the point where it was ridiculous. If it's for a reason, I accept it. If I'm doing something good, I will accept it. But if it's for no reason, I just don't want this. So if you give me a sign and you lead me, I will use it. But then all of a sudden we were in the church and I got a very extreme reaction. I mean, my whole body was just shaking out of nowhere. My poor husband was like, what is going on? Do you have low blood sugar? And I'm like, no, I'm fine. I'll meet you outside. And this is at the Church of the Miraculous Medal in Paris, France. I went out and he said, what happened? I told him what happened. And he's like, oh, well, that's great. Like, what now? And I said, well, I always remember that there is a saying, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And unfortunately, the teacher did appear, because then when we got back shortly thereafter, my sister committed suicide. And that's how I found my teacher. And then right after that, I thought, oh, good. Now I won't have this trembling because I've agreed to be trained in this. But we ended up at the Peabody Hotel in Memphis, Tennessee, and every night it would happen. And I was like, wow, I don't know. This is not right. Why is this happening? I went downstairs and I realized that it's up the street from St. Jude's Hospital. And in this particular hotel, the Peabody, there are so many families of, their children are getting treated at St. Jude. So there's families and children all needing healing. So I said, wow, I wonder if that's what it is. Because I really feel it goes to the greatest need. And there was a kiosk there. And in the kiosk was a necklace. I don't have it on right now, but it looked like rosary beads, but different. And I said, oh, I love that necklace. And they said, we don't sell it. They rent the kiosk. You got to go 2 blocks down. I went 2 blocks down on Main Street. They had one. I bought it. I showed my husband. I said, it's very funny though. I said, I do the rosary all the time. This is not the symbol, the regular symbol. It's on the rosary. This is something different. And then when I looked it up, it was called the Miraculous Medal. And that's the name of the church we were in. And it's the Miraculous Medal of St. Catherine Labour. And her body lays in state in this church in Paris, France, where I asked God to please give me a sign if I was meant to be an instrument for healing. Her hands like this with the rays coming out on Google. And then I later found out they actually kept her hands as relics because those are the ones where she allegedly had the vision of the Blessed Mother and created this medal. So after that, My husband was very understanding.